Hi there, and welcome to the Cotswold Explorer. I'm Robin Shuckburgh, and we're exploring the wonderful region of the Cotswolds in southwest England. For the last couple of years, we've been following in the footsteps of Herbert Evans, who wrote this wonderful book, Highways and Byways in Oxford and the Cotswolds, in 1905. Today, as you can see, we have a slightly expanded party. I'd like to, first of all, for you to meet Albie. Albie is a newcomer to our group because Ross is babysitting today for one of his family. So Albie's come to join us and film. He's a sweet fellow. He comes from some very exotic place in Eastern Europe, and he's a most charming chap, and he's made friends with Gizmo and Widget, so everything's going well so far. You find us all in the world-famous village of Great Tew. Now, I'm slightly ambivalent about this place. I've always felt it was a little bit like a film set. And the truth is, it is like a film set, and that's partly because it was built like one. We will explain this to you in more detail, but this village was actually built by the people who were building the main house in order to provide for them a picturesque village view from the house. That is extremely rare. In those days, what used to happen is that they'd knock down any building there was in sight of the main house, just in order to give them a clear view. So it's rare from that point of view. And what's extraordinary about it is that nothing has come along in the subsequent centuries to spoil the chocolate box picturesque beauty of this place. Come with us, we're going to show you around. Great Tew is in the very centre of what might be described as the new Cotswolds. Many properties around here are owned by highly successful and often famous people who have in some ways changed the feel of the place. When David Cameron was our Prime Minister, his family and friends became known as the Chipping Nortons set, not always in a flattering way. Since then, far more famous people like Jeremy Clarkson, whose television shows The Grand Tour and Clarkson's Farm reach worldwide audiences, have made the area their own. The Great Tew estate has played its part. The airfield on which the Grand Tour driving scenes are filmed is part of the estate, and the setup that could be said to have started the whole thing, Soho Farmhouse, an offshoot of Nick Jones's spectacularly successful Soho House Group, is also within spitting distance of the village. In principle, this has to be a good thing. A huge injection of money has meant the area has a sense of opulence and well-being. I just wish it didn't mean that it all becomes rather over-manicured. The waving swathes of cow parsley on the verges have been mown away, and everything looks just a tad suburban. However, it does mean that many of the great houses round here have been bought, restored and beautifully maintained by people ranging from ex-England soccer captains to titans of industry. Without their input, these places wouldn't survive without extreme difficulty, so perhaps the loss of rural feel is a small price to pay. The last I heard, the lovely main house at Great Tew was bought by Rupert Murdoch and Jerry Hall. Many of you will know that they're no longer together, and certainly the locals tell me that nothing has been done to restore the house for many years. This just adds to the checkered history of the place. The village improvements were started by a man called J.C. Loudon, who was the estate manager for George Stratton at the beginning of the 19th century. His main interest was agricultural, and he only built a few additional cottages, so it was when the estate was bought by the Birmingham industrialist Matthew Robinson Bolton in 1815 that the village was planned and extended, enhancing the existing cottages with Gothic doorways and porches, and creating the unique village as we see it today. I know from personal experience that some splendid improvements and general maintenance has taken place over the last 40 years. When I visited in the 1980s, many of the cottages were verging on the derelict. Whilst there are a few that will need rethatching soon, the general condition of the place is remarkable. It strikes you at once when you arrive here that there is absolutely no intrusion of the 20th century, apart from the cars, which of course line the streets, as they do everywhere in this part of the world. Practically every village we have visited over the last 6 years has some development, either around its boundaries or infilling between the old houses. So when you see what a place can look like when untouched, it's quite an eye-opener. The old pub, the Falkland Arms, is just as I remember it all those years ago, except the food is considerably better and it's busier. The cafe, a couple of doors down, is absolutely brilliant. Ross and I had a hot chocolate, a cappuccino and a bacon and egg bap, and it was good enough to guarantee a return visit. The decor is all farrow and ball colours and scrubbed tables, reflecting the kind of clientele they have. In view of what we've already discovered about the area, it doesn't really take us by surprise. This village is the last of the ironstone villages we will visit as we now head southwards, and it couldn't be a more beautiful way to crown what has been a fascinating excursion from the boundaries of the Cotswold. The church can be found at the top of the hill and is certainly worth the effort. Approached through an early 17th century gateway, the path to the church used to be the carriage drive to Great Tew House. The gate reminds me a little of the gates to the Botanic Gardens in Oxford, and it contains a beautiful mid-19th century iron gate. The Norman church was rebuilt in the 13th century and again remodelled in the 14th century. Its south doorway remains from around 1170. The south pillars in the nave arcade stand on square bases, which are probably remnants of the Norman church. The piscina and sedilia from the original church remain, albeit somewhat mutilated, and more modern versions added at a later date. The tomb recess of the north side of the chancel contains a beautiful white marble monument to Mary Ann Bolton, made in 1829, and a prone figure in armour with his feet on a sheep lies hidden in a side chapel. The 15th century octagonal font has elaborate blind tracery, and a rather unusual reading desk with a carved eagle base is nearby. The large churchyard has many interesting chest tombs amongst 17th and 18th century headstones. And there's no getting away from the fact that this little village is an absolute must for the Cotswold traveller. If I were you, I would put it somewhere very close to the top of your list when you plan your visit to the region. I do hope you've enjoyed our little trip around this extraordinary place of Great Tew. It really is beautiful, and you can tell why people come from all over the world to see this lovely village. We've enjoyed ourselves. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. When you do, press the little bell button so that we can let you know when we put up new stuff. And we will see you again very soon, somewhere else in the Cotswolds.